Well, start off by saying that when Kurt asked me to preach a couple weeks ago, obviously being in Africa at the time and living in this missions context and learning all these things, I'm thinking, yeah, I want to preach. I want to go home and tell my family at Grace Chapel. I want to tell my family about everything I'm experiencing and how amazing this is. And I was there for 3 months, every minute of 3 months. And I now have like 18 minutes left to all about it. And so that turns out to be a pretty daunting task. So I'm going to, you've gotten a snippet of what life was like there. So my goal this morning is just to give you a sneak peek into what I learned the most this semester, what I took away from the most this semester, and the principles and some of the things that I gained from that. And so when Kurt and I were working this out, we were talking about it. What is the one thing you can take away from Zambia that you would want to share with the church? And the first thing that comes to mind for me is discipleship. And this is something that our director, his name is Matt Miller, his family is they're missionaries in Rwanda, and they came to live with us for the 2.5 months that we were in Zambia and teach us. And he taught some of our Bible classes, or all of our Bible classes, and a class on strategy of missions, some of these things. And the one thing that he stressed all the time was discipleship. And in my head, I'm going, okay, that's a buzzword we've been hearing in church circles in recent years, but I don't really know what that means, discipleship. I mean, there's 12 disciples. Everybody's heard of them. And if you're a smarter person than I am, you probably see the word discipline hidden in there. But I still, to me, I didn't know what discipleship was. And so as we went through the semester, I kind of learned a little bit more about it. That's actually learned a lot more about it. And the key that came down to was obedience. You know, obedience is not a word that the majority of us like. I don't know really how to put that, but when I think of obey, I think of my dad going, pointing the finger, go do dishes or something. And I don't like that word. I don't like obedience necessarily in that context. But what I want to talk to you about this morning is about obedience and how it leads to peace in the context of our faith and being Christ followers and what that means. And it's really a beautiful thing. Even though it's not a word that most of us love, it's because Satan has convinced us that obedience and peace are opposites. And I think that's a lie that he's been selling since the garden. And it's a lie that he's trying to sell to me. I'll talk about that some in a little bit. And he could potentially be trying to sell it to you. And so I want to say this morning so that maybe if you're wondering some things, same things I was wondering about when I did this word discipleship, maybe it'll clear something up, especially in the context of obedience and peace. And so when you think of moments when in your youth, or if you're still youth, if you're being rebellious and doing things just to disobey someone that's in charge of you, think about the feelings that causes. This attitude of, first of all, if you're like a lot of my friends, it's, I've got it figured out. I'm going to go do this on my own now. No one can tell me what to do. But really, I don't think there's ever been someone who's rebelled against something and not been anxious about it. Because if you think of the consequences of what comes with a rebellion, it's something negative. Most likely, if you're rebelling against something your parents tell you to do, you're probably going to get some sort of a consequence. If you're rebelling against, I don't know, when you think of nations having rebellions, if they lose, they get hung or something. I mean, there's anxiousness that comes with rebellion because it's not always, it's the majority of the time it's not a good thing. But when you think of obedience, when you think of if I do what my parents tell me, they'll be happy with me. Or they'll say, okay, good, you've done what I want you to do, good. And it's more of a peaceful feeling. And that's not exactly the best illustration, but hopefully we can go into this a little bit more. I think Satan's lies, like I said, Satan's lies that come about peace come back, or about obedience and peace come back all the way to the garden. When you think he said just to Eve, you're not going to surely die. Just take it. You God is trying to put you down, God is trying to suppress you, do your own thing, that's what's going to give you peace. We all know that. And so this is something that's been going on since the beginning of mankind. So here's the big idea that I want to give you this morning. It's that obedience plus peace, obedience plus action equals peace. I thought of this yesterday morning, and I kind of cracked up a little bit because I'm just awful at math. And so why I would pick a math illustration is beyond me. But there's a point in here that I want to talk about something. That obedience and action equal peace. That obedience requires action. And when you put those two together, peace is the result. And so Curtis touched on this some in his sermon from Philippians. We talked about a couple weeks ago, Philippians 4:9 says, keep putting into practice all you learned and received from me, everything you heard from me and saw me do it. Then the God of peace will be with you. And I'm glad that we've been touching on this concept. I say we, I haven't been through it, but I'm glad that Grace Chapel has been touching on this concept for the last few weeks because this is the time of year we hear peace on earth, goodwill towards men, and things like that. And your sermon is peace on earth next week. And it's something that sometimes I feel like we just say, but it's something that I think we need to dive deeper into understanding because Jesus did come to earth to give peace. And it's really a beautiful thing, a beautiful gift, because that's something that, as humans, it's something that we crave, it's something that we desire, is peace. And it was disobedience in the garden that destroyed that peace, as we were mentioned. Who would have thought that obedience would be what restored that peace? See, one of the things we also learned this semester, and after the most from our director, is that truth is a paradox. And that was a mind-blowing thing into itself. We started doing this thing. He would say stuff all the time that was just mind-blowing. Every time he did, everybody in our class would just go, and so that was one of the things that we heard most of that. Truth is a paradox. And this is kind of goes along with that, is that obedience leads to peace. It's not something that we necessarily think of all the time as humans, as people. That's counterintuitive. Listen to the final words of Jesus that he gave to his disciples. This is Matthew 28. This is one of our key verses that we went through this semester. If you just want to read along with it on the screen, if you're a little more old-fashioned, you want to use your Bible, that's fine too. Seriously, though, some of these churches that we went to this semester were so transfused from, like, it was like stepping into a church from 1945 or earlier. I was halfway expecting them to unroll a scroll or something. So if you have a scroll, you can unroll that. Either way, just read along with it. Matthew 28:18-20. Then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always until the end of the age. What I want to mention now is the great cost of discipleship, the title of this sermon. The great cost of the discipleship comes down to this. Who are you going to obey? Because that's what a disciple is. It's someone who obeys someone that they follow. The disciples of Christ followed Jesus and obeyed him. And so that's what made them his disciples. So being a disciple, the great cost of discipleship comes down to who are you going to obey? Let me tell you an abbreviated version of some of my story of how I came to understand discipleship and what it means in my life. First of all, I'm awkward. If you know me for more than 2 minutes, you know that I'm awkward. But for those of you who knew me in middle school, you know how awkward I actually am. I took it to a new level. I know all middle schoolers are awkward. If you're a middle schooler in the room, you're awkward. I'm sorry, you are. But I took it to a new level. Like, I didn't have really any friends. Maybe one or two, but not really. But I had a couple things going for me, I guess. Played baseball, loved it. Always played baseball. That's always been one of my passions. My dad was my coach, and that was always an amazing fun time. Also played football, and I hated it. It was miserable. It was awful. I could not stand football. And I don't know why I kept doing it. Maybe it was because my dad was just stupid because he didn't care. But I kept doing it for whatever reason. Well, come one season, Shamblin ends up being my coach. And all y'all know the guy. If you don't, you should meet him. He's an amazing man. He's my coach, and I'm trying to fake an injury to get out of playing because I just did not want to play. And so I was trying to fake an injury, but luckily for me, he has a really cool son named Jackson. And one day, it was a picture day or a weigh-in or something like that, he nudges Jackson and says, hey, yell out and invite him to church. So Jackson does. We have that picture. I want to check this picture out real quick. This is me before the awkward setting. I was so cute. If you look at the background, you can see that name, Shambler, with your eyes are good. That's Jackson back there. We grew up playing together. And luckily, Jackson said, hey, if you want to come to church this Sunday, feel free. And I went, okay, why not? 7+ years later, I'm standing here. So this has been my home church ever since. And so all that came because Jackson obeyed a command from his dad and made eternal difference in my life. It's really beautiful. Sometimes I go to school with Jackson now. Sometimes I say to his friends and my friends that I would say, hey, I wouldn't know you if it weren't for this guy. This is completely true. They're just like, what? I get to explain the story. It's fun. But fast forward a few years, my grandma lived with us. She was the first Christian influence of home for me. My parents' son, but she was the first one who was really living it out for me to see. She died suddenly. She had the flu. A couple hours later, she was gone. And that was devastating for me. But I was really close to her. I remember laying in bed reading the Bible with her some nights, and it was just gone. That was crushing. So I started experimenting with things I shouldn't have been experimenting with, saying things I shouldn't have been saying, doing things I shouldn't have been doing, and ultimately disobeying my parents and God. And I won't go into too much detail, but I'm still living out some consequences from that period of my life. And it kills me that seeing what I know now, if I could just go back and grab freshman year in Casey and just go, oh, this is so stupid, I would do it. But I can't do that, and it's crushing. And so all because I was disobeying things that I knew were wrong. I was doing things that I knew were wrong. But that era, that period of life started to change around 10th grade for me. I was 16. I can remember sitting outside Dunkin' Donuts with Rocky and Jackson and Kendall O'Connor and some other people I was in youth group with, and Rocky saying, hey, what would y'all think about going to New Orleans on a mission trip this summer? And with my brother and his youth group. And I don't remember exactly what I thought, but it was something between and oh, New Orleans, that would be fun. Didn't think too much of it. But I went to Uplift every summer, which is the campus party. I signed up for that. Here's a funny story about me being bad at math. I failed math that year and had to do summer school, and didn't get to go to Uplift. But because I had deposited some money towards Uplift, and then the New Orleans trip was coming up, I was like, hey, how about we just transfer that over there, and you can go to New Orleans. Sure, why not? And at that point, it was the most life-changing experience in my entire life. It really helped me to realize how much I love people, how much I love helping people where I could, and it was a beautiful event. Fast forward once again, October of that year, I'm walking out of the youth room, and in passing, Rocky says something to me, and as I'm walking away, he goes, oh, hey, and I turn around, and he goes, how do you feel about going to India? And my mind goes, but my mouth goes, heck yeah, and I don't know why I did that, but I did. And so I ended up going, and then that course far surpassed anything else on the life-changingness scale for me. I went again my senior year, and I really realized that I could